it's Lisa with the second video about the Gelli printing plate. This time we're going to actually print some things. The Gelli printing plate is from Gelli Arts. It is about 3/8 of an inch thick pad, and mine is the 8x10 size, and they come in lots of different sizes. And this is a surface that we'll add our paint to, and then it's sort of a reverse process. We'll get to that in just a moment. I want to share with you some things that you want to have out when you're working with it, and a few do's and don'ts. The first thing I would suggest is to take the box that it comes in and the plastic covers that go over it and put those away. I mean, not completely away, just put them aside so that they're not on your table and they're not apt to get paint on them and have to be cleaned up, because you just don't need to do that, and you don't want to get a lot of paint built up on those that might press into your dried paint, that might press into your plate later on. So I'm just going to move this aside. You'll want to have out lots of paper towels, water bottles to clean your Gelli pad off as you work. You'll want to have some cardstock. I have white Neenah, let's see here, get this right. I bought this at Office Max. It's Neenah 110-pound exact indexed cardstock, and I'll put that on the screen. Now you can use lots of different kinds of cardstocks. I've used other brands as well. This has a very smooth surface and it gives a really pretty impression. You just want something with a little bit of weight to it, and you can use your colorful cardstocks, or your I could probably use designer paper. I just haven't tried that yet. And we'll use some other things as well as the cardstock. But have several sheets of that at hand, including one sheet for rolling off your paint. You'll want a brayer. One of the first problems that I ran into is the only brayer that I had was one that just did not roll well. I never thought the thing was very good, and it just wasn't very even on the surface, and it just didn't roll well. And my first few prints, I was really struggling with getting my paint distributed good, and I made a special trip to Hobby Lobby, which is 15 miles each way for me, just to buy a new brayer, but it made the world of difference. This is the Ranger's, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's one that rolls well. For paint, I have found personally that the cheaper paints actually work the best. So I use a lot of craft paint. My personal favorite is the Anita's brand. I have some Martha Stewart here and some Americana. You can use whatever brands that you like. Your Liquitex Basics work well. There's Academy acrylic paints. I get those at Hobby Lobby. Those work really well. And I do use some of my Liquitex, the heavy bodies, the more expensive paints. But I found that I really like the craft paint. And you'll see as we go along how they spread on the Gelli plate. You'll want to have some stencils. It's snowing today, or has snowed today here in North Carolina, so I thought we'd do something snow themed. I have not used the stencil, so I don't know how well this one works. I found that some stencils work better than others, and again, you'll get to see that as we go along. Some of the things like this one that I use a lot with other projects, mixed media, and all my scrapbooking and all, I haven't liked it as much on the Gelli plate. And then things that, like this stencil from Michaels, that's kind of a little thin maybe, and if you put that down on paper and you go over it with a paintbrush and trying to put paint in, it tends to move. Works beautifully on the Gelli plate because it's not going to move. So we'll play with lots of different things there. Now for my first layer, what I like to do personally is I like to have some color on a pretty smooth color on the first layer of the paper. I want some texture to it, and this is a visual texture, some visual texture to it, but I don't really want a lot of white showing in the background. That's just me, because white is not really my color so much. I like to have a little more colorful look. So I'm going to put something, and I like to work with lighter colors up to darker colors, and again, that's just something I figured out as I worked through this. Distress paints are a paint that works really well. Now another tip that when you're opening paint, open them away from the Gelli plate. And the reason for that is because a lot of times when you open paint, there'll be little flecks of it. There are some coming off right there. If you open it over the Gelli plate, of course, they're just going to stick to that gel surface, and you'll have to get them off, or they'll end up in your project. So I'm going to put some of this down. And I was going to give you the tip of staying monochromatic, but I'm going to violate that right off the bat and use some Liquitex pink to go with that weathered wood distress paint. So we'll bit of that. Kind of put as much or as little as you want. You'll figure out how much you want to use. And then we're going to spread that with the brayer. You need some space. That should have been my first tip, is make room. Because you're going to need a little bit of space for things. And I find as I work, no matter what it is, scrapbook page, card, whatever, my surface gets smaller and smaller because I don't sit them far enough to the side and they start closing in on me. Okay, now you can see that Liquitex paint didn't spread quite as well as the Distress paint. Now here's what my scrap sheet is for. It's just rolling this excess off. Now, I want to lay something down on this to get a little bit of texture. I'm just not going to put this straight onto the paper, and bubble wrap is a wonderful thing for that, for me. We'll see some other things too. But the bubble wrap will pull up some of the paint and leave me some design. And I'm working fairly quickly here, and I'm taking a piece of white cardstock and just going over my design. And you can roll over it or you can just press with your hands. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure. And there's my first print with some gray and some pink. Now I have what's left is what's going to be called a ghost print. I can do it on another sheet of paper to see what it looks like, or I could do it on, let's do some tissue paper. I cut my tissue paper today kind of small. I buy my tissue paper at the dollar store. It has a little bit of a sheen to one side of it. I'm putting the sheen side down. You could go the other way. Tissue paper works great, and it's especially good because it really cleans off your plate really well, and you get some color. Now, I will probably add another layer to that. Sometimes the tissue paper, whatever you pull up, just looks so pretty that I don't do anything more, but I'll probably add another layer to that. And I work left to right. The supplies my blank papers and stuff are on. I'm sorry, I work right to left. I'm right-handed, so my blank stuff is over here on the right, my paper towels are over here on the right, and then the things that I print and my used stencils go over to the left. That's just the system that I've developed. Now I'm going to clean what's left of my plate. You don't have to. You can leave that on there and add more paint. You get some interesting looks that way. Again, it's just playing with it. You will go through a fair amount of paper towels. But otherwise, the supplies for using the Gelli plate are cheap. The paper's cheap, you're using inexpensive paints. Alright, now I want to work with this stencil, so I think I'd like to add a little blue to the background. So, let's see what I got here in blue. I don't have a true blue. I do, but it's kind of dark. I'm going to use actually some tealy colors here. And maybe a little bit of white, because I don't really want this to be super, super dark. So just going to do some colors from Americana. That's an old one. I don't know if they even still make Indian turquoise. This is new this is current from Martha Stewart, called Beach Glass. Oh, this bottle doesn't. Now I just violated my rule. That bottle doesn't come out good. I have to open it. And then we've got some white. Throw a little bit of white in there. Well, that came out good. So that it won't end up being quite so dark. Just spread that over. That's going to be pretty color combination. Alright, we'll roll our excess off here. Lay my stencil down. Now I've got a little bit of area here that didn't get anything picked up. I have this trim. This is just some burlap trim from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to use that to make an impression in the top and the bottom. That stencil was cut on the silhouette. Laying quite flat. Alright, I'm going to take my print back here, and let's see. I've moved it, so I have it down like this. Now you'll notice my tape lines, these are just some washi tape. You don't have to do that, but I found that I wanted a way to kind of know where my paper was going each time. this because I'm working on 8.5 by 11 paper with an 8 by 10 Gelli plate. So that was just something that I liked. Okay. So now I have actually ended up with pink snowflakes because pink was on the back and with this blue around the outside. So that makes a pretty print, and you can see where I've used some of the texture from this trim to pick up the design. Okay. Now what we're going to have though is a beautiful ghost print. And what I'm going to put my ghost print on is this paper that I've been rolling off on. So let's put this down and see how it looks. That would have been really pretty on tissue paper too. Oh, I lost most of it because there was so much blue in the background. I got a little bit of the pink. Sometimes, well, some of my ideas work and some of them don't. But yeah, the blue on blue didn't come out so hot. But I've still got something with some pretty texture there, and we'll do probably some more things with it. Usually you can't get a third print, but I'm going to try it with the tissue paper. Usually 2 passes for me is all I can get. I might get something out of it with the tissue paper. We'll see. No, I'm not getting much. Just a little bit of color. So usually 2, and then I wash it or I add some more paint. So now we're going to make another one and do the exact opposite in terms of the colors. We're going to put the blue colors, the blue-green colors, on the bottom. I say the exact opposite. I am going to do a little bit different design on the bottom. You can use lots of things you find around the house to make your impressions. And one of the things I found one day was this was a cookie container. Aldi's has wonderful chocolate covered butter cookies, and this is the container they came in, and the bottom of it makes a great design. So that will pull up a little bit of the paint and leave us with some design for our first layer, as opposed to the glue dots that I did before. Or not glue dots, I'm sorry, bubble wrap. Right, and I'll just pull a little bit of the excess of this off with some tissue paper. That picked up a little bit more blue. And then for my next layer, I'm going to use my pink and weathered wood combo that I did on the bottom of the first one. And this is the one that will end up with the stencil on it. Now that pink Liquitex paint just does not spread as well as the craft paint. And I can't say all the Liquitex paints are that way. That's the only one I have. So I don't know, but that's the way this one worked. Now, personally, I like the first one better. I liked that pink color coming through more than I liked the blue, having the blue color come through the design. But it's, it's up to you what you like, and you just have to play with them. And sometimes it's fun to do 2 that are the same design but with opposite color arrangements. And this one, again, because that pink didn't spread very much, it wasn't bad. It's a good first layer, and then I'll do something else with it later on. So now we're going to switch gears with some different colors and different stencils. This time I'm using different paints. This time I'm using some of the Academy acrylic and some Liquitex heavy body paints, or a little more expensive paints. I decided to throw the gray in there with these gold colors kind of at the last minute and just see what I get. It's really interesting because it comes up with this sort of greenish tone. You can kind of see it as it's being rolled off there. Then I have one of those stencils that I say works really well with the Gelli plate because it just has to lay there nice and flat. We don't have to worry about pressing, it moving when you put a paintbrush or foam brush or something over the top of it. Let's see what our first impression looks like. Really pretty design. Then we're going to do a ghost print. Which is another interesting design. Needs some more layers. Then I had this idea that I would do a frame. so that I would have some of that middle, that design showing through the middle, and then I would have another color around the outside. I'm using another Academy acrylic paint, and I wanted to show you what happens when you put metallics in. The metallics look gorgeous on these things, and they spread really well. These are golden iridescent metallics. This is the bronze color. They're expensive, but they go a long way because you only need a drop. Now I'm using a stamp to pull up some of the color, and since I'm pulling that up, I may as well stamp it off somewhere and utilize that color. I will probably never roll paint or try to put paint on a stamp again unless I use a Gelli plate, because this is the evenest application of paint on a stamp I've ever seen. But I made a big mistake. I put the paper down opposite. I didn't put, what I intended to do was put the center down as my mask, not the outside. So I ended up having to redo that. I just did it off camera with the same colors and all, and then I put the center of the oval that I cut, and that is a mask, and then you can see the colors, the reddish colors and metallics on the outside. So let's take a look at some of the ones that we made. This is our pretty snowflake one that started out with the pink and then went over with the blues and greens, and then the opposite color arrangement. I like this one the best, personally. And then this was the sort of rolled off colors, and then I tried putting a little more snowflake design with one of those ghost prints. But I'll probably add something more to this. I kind of keep a pile of these, and other times I find myself maybe some blues and greens or some yellow or something, and add to the top of that. But I have a scrapbook layout in mind for this, so probably see that coming up in a later video. Then these went in a completely different direction. I wanted you to see the metallics. So we had this design and then did the oval mask, and I can see some ways of pulling this out. I think it needs a little frame on the inside. I might add, just cut a little frame out of some paper or cardstock and put in there. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do with that. Got some thoughts there. It could also be cut up and used like in card design. So you could cut that up and have flower or something down here, and do some different kinds of designs with that. And then here's the one where I rolled up and did the stamping. So you got some pretty things. And this was what I did with the ghost print one. I'm not crazy about that, so I don't know whether I'll end up keeping that or not. But that's just some of the fun things that you can do with the Gelli plate. Just a few ideas of lessons that I've learned with it, and you get very unexpected results. And sometimes you don't really know for sure what you're going to like and what you're not going to like when you're going through and creating these. But I will be using more of these and doing some additional videos, so I hope you'll join me. Thanks.